I've got plenty of battery here. All right. All right. So what I've got here today is welcome to Sleeping Up, my little new live stream show I'm doing on here. I've got Archangel Avacyn today. This is one of my favorite decks I built for the show. Like I remember when it first came out, I immediately had this deck in mind, but there wasn't a Boros general that could quite make the deck come together in a way that was particularly relevant. It'd be kind of like those old days where you were running like I don't know, like, do they have a 5-color angel? I don't know, but it'd be like running a 5-color angel deck with Corona the False God as your general. It just doesn't feel the same. It should be a 5-color angel general. It should fit the theme. But not even that. Boros generals used to suck back then. And this is the first one that has some real staying power, some real impact on the board that isn't just hurting people. Archangel Avacyn is a 5-drop 4/4, flash flying vigilance. When she enters the battlefield, all creatures you control gain indestructible. Already that's a pretty solid deal by itself with no other synergies with the rest of your deck. And then you're going to have, when a non-angel creature you control dies, you transform her, and she flips into a 6/5 flying that bolts everything but you on the board. Paragon of the Amisha, but that only works for Popper. Also be back in a little bit. Paragon of the Amisha. Oh, shit. I have no clue what that is. I'm going to look like an idiot. Paragon of the Amisha. Oh, I know what you're talking about. That knight that turns into a 5/5 flying lifelink angel or some shit like that. The other one turns into a dragon. Yeah, no, that only works for Popper, and that's about as close as you get. Let me know if the music is a little overbearing. I tried to put something in the background so that there's not just me talking. I feel like that's not really working out for me personally. I hate like just voice dead air, but I've got some just ambient music in the background, so just let me know if that's obnoxious. But yeah, we're going to be looking at my Archangel Avacyn deck today that I played for the show, and that I've been keeping up on the whole time. So this is honestly one of my favorites. I think Boros Control was an archetype that was just waiting to get a real solid general that wouldn't feel like you were an idiot for playing it. And they finally gave it to us, and I've got the nice handy from the Vault Transform version, which it was nice getting a foil version that isn't expensive as fuck. I think at the time she was like $60 foil when I wanted her. Actually, no, wasn't she 50 for a little bit? Like, it was so obvious she was going to see play that it was like $50. I don't know, man. She was definitely that like just hyper competitively pushed card for standard. But this deck does 3 things primarily, and you're going to see it as like kind of a theme throughout the central of the deck. Obviously, it's got a little bit of a shell of card advantage that's kind of like not really thematic, but you've got removal, you've got prevention effects, and here, mass wipes. Basically every deck played her in standard. I remember her at the time, and my local meta didn't really get a lot of play with her. She didn't show up as much as I thought she would. I think in my local standard meta, she wasn't very good because we were playing a lot of decks that like kind of tripped up the white decks. I'm not sure what was going on. For whatever reason, I was playing a lot back then, and I didn't see a lot of her. When she first came out, that was Shadows over Innistrad, right? Yeah, that was Shadows. So yeah, in Shadows, I was playing Dragon Lord Reanimator, so I really didn't give a fuck about Avacyn, to be honest. She didn't really show up a lot. When you were putting out Dragon Lord Atarka turn 5, I guess she just didn't have a lot of impact. She was kind of just Sarah Angel for the most part. And even still, I just didn't see a lot of her. Lucky? Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky. I was playing completely in a meta that was not ready. At a time where there was basically no graveyard removal, and I was playing the big reanimator deck in the meta. There really wasn't a lot that could stop me that wasn't just hyper aggro, and I think really aggressive decks were bad at the time. I can't remember what they were. I think they were mostly just vampires. Like gimmicky vampire decks were really the only aggro decks, and a lot of people just opted not to play them for the most part. You'd have a couple like stragglers, but they were the kind of guys that didn't have it fully fleshed out either. Like they didn't even have all the cards. So I guess I just never really saw the one deck that could prey on me. And I remember winning a lot of events because of that, because my meta was just completely unequipped to deal with a reanimator deck. But that's not the topic we're talking about today. I'm going to try and keep on with Archangel Avacyn and those 3 things I talked about: mass red wipes, prevention effects, and just straight good removal, 1-for-1 removal. And the point of the deck is you're going to try and land one of these prevention effects, which I'll be going over. And what you're going to do after that is you're going to either look for a doubler or something like a doubler or something like repercussion, and then you're going to blow the board with a red effect. You have a indestructible effect that you can place before doing one of these red rafts, especially things like Blasphemous Axe, which can be cheap, and something like repercussion for an unaware board state is more than easy to cast at the same time as playing one of these, something like Chain Reaction, Arc Bond, Rolling Earthquake, or Earthquake, and it's more than enough to kill all your opponents while you take no damage yourself. So the main contenders for your mono red rafts, you've got things like Blasphemous Act. I play cards like Balefire Dragon, which deals combat to them and zaps all their creatures, which is still great with things like Repercussion or some of the other effects we're running. Just having a Wrath on a stick for anything 6 toughness or less is always a solid move. And a lot of my digging goes for the doublers, so you could do even more damage and completely wipe a board. Star of Extinction. This is a new card for the deck. 20, destroy target land, and Star of Extinction deals 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Not only do you get to deal with the planeswalkers that this deck kind of had a hard time dealing with before, at least in a 2-for-1 fashion and not just a 1-for-1 removal, because it plays no planeswalkers for the most part. I believe I play a single copy of Nahiri. Well, not a single. You can only play a single, but a copy of Nahiri for just kind of flavor and the fact that she's just really solid. Being able to exile a tapped creature or any enchantment or a tapped artifact is pretty much good enough. But the filter effect is what really puts her ahead. In EDH, she kind of gets enough life to stay up, but we'll talk about her later. Star of Extinction is more than enough with something like with Repercussion out to just kill everyone. Pretty much no one survives when you get that off. Definitely a big part of winning in the deck is Repercussion. I'm not going to lie. I believe I used to have Vicious Shadows in here, but it wasn't quite getting me there. For the most part, the way you're winning is either Repercussion or just by picking off the stragglers with just your large angels. A lot of the cards that would naturally end up in here are just creatures with flying and large powers and toughness anyways. So you're more than within your range to just start hitting people with creatures until they die. Another card that fits the red Wrath archetype is we're usually the Falling Star. Fantastic card. When it dies, you're going to deal 5 damage to each creature on the ground, which also means you're going to dodge hitting all your angels. This is one of the weird scenarios where Earthquake, Ryuzi, and all those effects are actually pretty solid because you can kind of dodge you can kind of make them what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of one-sided, because for the most part, you're probably going to be playing a lot more big flying beaters than anyone else. There's really not a lot of utility on the ground for you. And especially being the Boros player, they may not see it coming. Chain Reaction is another excellent card. It's the red Wrath of God, and more decks should play it that are control in red, even though you don't see a lot of that. But I like it because it's basically going to do it for you. Hey, what's up, Pete? Talking about Archangel Avacyn here, and how Chain Reaction is the most underrated red card, I believe, in Magic history. I can't think of one that doesn't get as much respect as it deserves. Maybe, I don't know, Red Gear Hulk, but that might just be a bias on my part. I think Chain Reaction is dumb, and for the most part is just a red Wrath of God. Exactly. I'm playing Chain React, or I'm playing Blasphemous Act, Balefire, or Star of Extinction, Chain Reaction. I love Arc Bond. Arc Bond is the only thing that even comes close. It's so easy to set up a board wipe with Arc Bond. It's not even funny. And I like it so it hits players as well. A lot of times you'll be able to keep your life total a little higher than all your opponents for the most part, because you're kind of playing the one-for-one control removal deck. Having Archangel Avacyn is a natural deterrent to being attacked for the most part. And Arc Bond's an amazing way to set that up. If someone goes to attack you, you play Archangel Avacyn, all your creatures gain indestructible, and then you play Arcbound. Shout out to Starstorm, instant speed board wipe with cycling. It's really close to being playable enough for me. If Star of Extinction didn't just get printed, I might have looked to either Starstorm or I'm not even sure what else I'd use besides Starstorm, honestly. Maybe just the isn't there just like a Magma Quake or something like that? That's like the only other thing I could think of. Just because Star of Extinction was actually really important because it deals with planeswalkers in a way that isn't terrible, that isn't just O-ring for the most part. But I love Arc Bomb. Like, this card just fucking completely changes the game for just 3 mana. It's so easy to set up other people blocking, attacking into each other, blocking. You've got like an 8 damage about to go, not on the stack, but you got about 8 damage to go, you know, like about to happen. You just go Arc Bond and you just blasted everything for 8 for 3 mana. It's really easy to set up, and I think it's another severely underrated red Wrath, even though nobody plays them but me. But it's perfectly capable of completely killing everybody with one of the prevention effects, instant speed with repercussion. No one's ever going to see it coming. I also play Whirling Earthquake, which thank God this card got reprinted. I don't know how much it was before its reprint, but I imagine it was kind of gross and not worth it. And now I've got one, and it's pretty in its foil. It also looks very similar to the transformation, from the Vault transformation symbol. So that's cool. And then we've got Earthquake. This should be like it should be a much more pimped out Earthquake. I have no idea why it's a fucking Commander 17, but I'm disappointed in myself. But Earthquake and Rolling Earthquake do basically the same thing. One of them hits flyers, the other one hits non-flyers. For the most part, they kind of function the same for what we're going for. I know. I have no idea why it's just a reprinted fucking Earthquake. Like, there are so many versions of it. I have no idea why this is the one I put in. A lot of these symbols are fucking ugly. I need to get better versions of these cards. But that's what you're looking at for red Wraths. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not counting the 2 creatures we're using, and Balefire, which are more than capable of functioning for the most part as Wraths, or taking out multiple creatures at once. Because we don't play any of the white ones in here. We just play red ones because, not because it's on theme, but a little bit because it's on theme, and also because we're trying to win with things like Gisela, Dictate of the Twin Gods, Furnace of Wrath, or Repercussion, just kind of taking somebody out kind of taking people out through picking them off as angels or taking them out outright with repercussion, or finishing what they have left with things like Earthquake. Next, the other big part of the puzzle for winning in a way that's just super fun is the prevention effects, because you don't want to die from the same things you're casting. And the ways to do that, there are actually a weirdly high amount of ways that I was able to find that can kind of keep you from dying from your own shit. But there are still not as many as I'd like. I'd like some functional reprints or some various takes on these kind of effects. And those are the kind of things you could add to this deck. But for now, the big one is Avacyn Guardian Angel, pretty much the only deck in Magic history that runs her, because she did literally nothing when she was printed. But she is a 5-drop, 5/4 flying vigilance. So basically another Sarah Angel. But she can pay 2 to prevent all damage that be dealt to another target creature this turn by sources of the color of your choice. Pick a color, creature you control doesn't take damage from it this turn. And it's just 2 mana. So add on to any one of your Blasphemous Act effects, which you'll probably have maybe 2 or 3 creatures, and you're paying 1 red and maybe like another like 4 to 6 mana, and you're preventing all that damage to your own creatures, saving yourself a one-sided wrath. It's a little clunky, but you can hold open your mana in this deck. You're more than capable of draw going and just building up some ramp. And then she can pay 5 to choose a color source, and then all damage dealt to you this turn is prevented. So for 2 mana, she can kind of fog. She can fog a color choice of damage to one of your creatures. For 7, she can color fog all the damage sent at you, which is huge for keeping you alive later. If she sticks around and they don't have the removal for it, they have no choice but to just stop attacking you almost entirely in most 2, 3, 1, 2, and maybe some 3 color decks. A lot of them tend to be somewhat on theme for what creatures they're running, or tend to focus a little bit higher on their beef being in 1 color. You can easily prevent yourself so much damage and completely deter attacks with this. We're not necessarily looking to deter attacks entirely. Of course we are, but we're not going to be running any of the ghostly prison effects like that. That's not quite what we're doing with this deck. We don't mind people attacking us for the most part, with a couple of creatures here or there. Pretty much after the first rattlesnake removal of a creature, you're not going to be looking at a lot of like attacks for a while, especially since you're capable of actually killing them in this deck. But Avacyn's a great way to prevent some stuff, some of these wraths from affecting your creatures. We've got Light of Sanction, a card literally no one's heard of. Again, 3-drop, prevent all damage that we've dealt to creatures you control by sources you control. So that includes not only instant sorceries, whatever artifacts or whatever creatures you might have that do it, but also Avacyn flipping. Doesn't kill all your shit or damage any of your creatures. But again, something like Earthquake or Rolling Thunder is now just a one-sided wrath. It's basically just a comet storm you're sending at everything but you. It's pretty nice, or everything but or all your opponents or whatever. It still hits you. You got to remember that. They're not perfect, but they're just good enough. Another card no one's fucking heard of, but I believe this card got really expensive for like 10 seconds when it was first spoiled from Dragon's Maze. It's Legion's Initiative. Red creatures you control get +1/+0. White creatures you control get +0/+1. So 1 more toughness for red, or 1 more power for red creatures, 1 more toughness for white. +1/+1 for red and white creatures, which I don't even think we have any besides Gisela, but that's not important. What's important is the second effect. You can pay a red and a white and exile this enchantment. Exile all creatures you control. At the beginning of the next combat phase, return those creatures to the battlefield under their owner's control, and those creatures gain haste. So you basically long form flicker your entire board, preventing them from either rafts or spot removal or your own shit, whatever might be happening. But then not only that, but they all gain haste the next combat. So it's perfect for activating off turn, getting all of your ETBs, and then being able to swing with all of them again, which is more than feasible for abuse in this deck. A lot of these big angels, these big creatures have various effects when they enter, and not even that. It just functions as essentially a full protection for just 2 mana. Though it only happens once, but that's often more than enough to keep yourself from dying, keep your creatures from dying, or really changing the game. Not only that, but people are less likely, since it's sitting on board, it kind of has that effect the seals do, like Seal of Cleansing and shit like that, where essentially people just really don't want to mess, don't even want to bother when they see that happening. A lot of people tend not to just take the shot and what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of grit their teeth and, let one of their wraths completely whiff against you. They'll hold off on it. Next card we got is basically the same as Light of Sanction, but it's Mark of Asylum. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. Almost the same, but your opponent's stuff doesn't work either. Light of Sanction prevents all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control by sources you control. Mark of Asylum is not all non-combat. For the most part, they function so similarly you won't notice. This one just costs 2 mana, which is more than capable of keeping bricked in your hand until you can kind of play out the whole combo kind of together in one turn, which is how you want to do it. You don't want to play at stuff like this. You can kind of play a little early because maybe people aren't going to put 2 and 2 together, but you really don't want to play your hand into your end game idea until you really need it there. For the most part, you just kind of want to be removing stuff for the first couple turns of the game. And what we have next is another card I mentioned in my Queen Marchesa. Is that how you say it? How do you say that? Because I already got a comment of somebody telling me I was an asshole for pronouncing it wrong. Either way, Queen Marchesa, Righteous Aura, and I've already mentioned this card. It's just a 1 and a white enchantment that you can pay 1 white and 2 life to prevent all damage to you from one source. This is easily a way to keep an enormous amount of damage off yourself. When you kind of scale it for EDH, Marchesa. Man, I'll never be able to say that well. Marchesa. That doesn't sound nearly as striking to me. I don't know. I always pronounce it Marquesu. Well, I don't know if that's better or worse than the way I say it, but I think I'm adding 5 extra vowels to the way I say it, so I apparently deserve to be taken out. Marquesa. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have no idea, man. This is why, I say Emrakul, and people say Emrakul. Everyone has different ways of pronouncing this shit. Just, I know Marchesa is dumb, but Marquesa. Oh, that's what I'm running with. Marquesa, Queen Marquesa. Use Righteous Aura. This card is awesome and more than willing of keeping yourself from dying. If you scale it for EDH, the card essentially reads, pay 1 white and 1 life comparatively to prevent all damage from you. You'd play that card in quite a bit of competitive formats, I'm sure, if it existed as the way it kind of functions in EDH. Hold on 1 second. I got to plug in this computer. I really need a screen door for this room. It is so fucking hot in here, and I don't have a screen for my window. So take a drink. No, please. Please don't drink every time I make an idiot of myself. You will die. You will be in the hospital in minutes. I guarantee you. But yes, Righteous Aura, play this card. If you're anything probably non-blue that's control, it's more than capable of keeping people off your back for so much longer than it should be. And that doesn't necessarily protect your creatures. These windows that are screwed shut. What the fuck, dude? That's kind of messed up. Like unironically, just like screwed to the wall. Like it's not like a joke or something. That's super fucking weird. Righteous Aura, it prevents the damage to you. I live in a basement in Central. I say, well, you're a dick, Peter. Don't know what to tell you. Get out of my live stream and go have fun with your sub 90 temperatures, unlike me. So Righteous Aura is great. It only prevents it to you, but that still kind of works with the idea of the repercussion combo where no, don't leave, Pete. I'll miss you. It works with the repercussion combo because even if all your creatures are getting damaged, you can still prevent it yourself. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking to put one of these two piles of cards kind of together and keeping yourself from dying from your own repercussion while everyone else just gets wasted. Mother Runes, I really don't have to explain this card, do I? But for the most part, it just gives a creature you control protection from the color of your choice. Boom. Does exactly what we just needed, but also has the added effect for giving your creatures basically Shroud, at least until end of turn. It's really hard to get one open enough to get it put in a single window unit. It isn't enough. I am sorry. I could get a window unit if I wasn't lazy, but here we are. So it is only my fault. And then next, I mentioned these cards before. This is just another little added effect, but they're really important. We got the mana doublers, things like Gisela. Not only mana doublers, but Gisela also prevents it to yourself. So she's doubly important. If she's out, there's really no way this deck loses for the most part. There really aren't a lot of games where I've managed to land Gisela and not kind of won in the next like turn or so. Mana doubler, did I say mana doubler? I meant damage doubler. And prevention, yeah, I meant damage doubler. I'm ill-equipped for this. I have not gone over my lines enough. This is very much scripted, and I am misreading my lines. But we also have Dictated Twin Gods. This one has Flash, and it's an enchantment that makes all damage doubled, which is more than capable of killing somebody with Archangel Avacyn. I kind of do need a co-host, but I don't know if anybody wants to do this with me. This is miserable. It is like 85 degrees in here, and we're talking about my decks, which are terrible. So I'm not sure who would want to do this with me, but I have had Kyle on here before. I think he's showing up in a little bit to hang out. He's going to be living here. Maybe I should force him to be in here when it's not horrible temp-wise. But maybe I can bring on a couple of guests if we talk about decks that aren't mine, or just decks that are a little bit cooler than this one or a little bit more well established. But Dictated Twin Gods is more capable of kind of punking somebody out, especially if Avacyn gets a couple clean hits. And all right, we may get Pete Johnson on here, who is a great guy, great deck builder. Real creative dude. Real close to getting him on the show, but maybe we'll be able to get him on here and finally give you the spotlight you deserve. Still, Twick dictates, awesome. You can also easily punk somebody out by just playing it when they just got attacked. It's a great card that basically functions as a Furnace of Wrath that has the added effect of also just being a burn spell to your opponent's face sometimes. Furnace of Wrath, same card, just costs 3 red. A little restrictive, but I'd say mana base wise, this is pretty much the only deck. Oh, I like to talk you up, Pete. This is pretty much the only deck that I would actually say something like I know I've said in the past that dual lands are for the most part moot. In a lot of decks, mana bases now, you really don't need them anymore, and you'd be hard pressed to find a reason to spend the money. Plateau is pretty much only really necessary in a deck like this. And this is if you enjoy the deck enough and you really play it, and it's something I should get for myself. This is pretty much the only deck where you'd be justified, because the mana base is pretty intensive for a lot of these cards, or the color weight is very intensive. And on top of that, just you don't get a lot of fixing. It's not nearly as easy to fix Boros as literally any other color combination. So you may find yourself wanting it. And this is the only deck where I'd say it's maybe justified, if you have one, bothering to put it in. Besides anything other than showing off. Because let's be honest, that's what I'm doing. When I put dual lands in my decks, it's because I have them and because I'm showing off, and I'm perfectly willing to admit that. Because otherwise they're functionally so not needed. But and those are the damage doublers and repercussion, which is really, really important to the deck. I can't stress enough how much this deck does not work without repercussion, or works way worse. The card really does add just so much to. It's the only reason you're running red Wraths over anything else for the most part. Either besides the fact that they also have the added benefit of hurting your opponent, which means you can kind of pick them off of Angels later. But it's still pretty necessary, and it's on the reserved list. So I'd get them fast if you're thinking about building it. But those are the three main tenets, kind of what we're doing. That's kind of like the theme of the deck, and what really makes it fun and what makes you win is those three piles of cards. We've got a couple of stragglers that don't really have a spot per se in terms of what they do, but they do things that are kind of important for the deck, kind of just good stuff. We have Exquisite Archangel, 7-drop, 5/5 flying. If you would lose the game, instead exile it, and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. Again, on theme, another card that prevents you from dying from your earthquakes, your rolling earthquakes, all that good jazz, and also prevents you from dying from your repercussion and other things. It deters attacks kind of naturally and keeps you from dying, basically. And so it's important for the deck. You could almost put that in the prevention spot. I guess if whatever that card I was playing before, Righteous Aura, can put there. I guess this card put there too. We'll put that in that pile. There we go. We did it. We Jesus fucking Christ. I shouldn't be doing these. Thursday's the best day for me to do this, but it's also the day I just got off like a 20-hour shift. And if I don't sleep enough, I start to come off a little delusional, so be patient with me. But we have Sun Titan. This is actually a card that just doesn't really do anything thematically appropriate, but it just does so much otherwise. It's an amazing tool for getting back a lot of mana rocks, small creatures, stuff like that. Fetches, if you're that kind of guy. I don't think I am here. I should really put in things like Evolving Wilds and like all the fetches I can find. But even without all that, you're still looking at just an incredible card with just so much utility that you'll just find it as you go. Plus, getting back repercussion is important. So that's an incredible card. It should probably be in there, even though it doesn't do much. I like Dualcaster Mage. Sometimes your favorite white card of all time. Yeah, a lot of people have had that. It's probably up there for me too. Probably my favorite white creature. It just does a lot of fun shit. I really can't think of a white creature that kind of makes me feel that. Like, I don't know. I don't play a lot of white. This is pretty much the most white deck I play. And I'm not, it's basically only because I'm playing red with it that it's been able to stick around. I'm really not a fan of white, but Sun Titan is definitely up there. It's definitely an awesome card. Like, my favorite white cards are things like fucking Tithe, or like, I don't know. I've got, yeah, it's like Tithe, Gift of Estates. It's like, those are cards I like. Just stuff that fixes, and it shouldn't even be in white. I don't know. I'm fucking lame. But we've got Dualcaster Mage here. Dualcaster Mage, just an excellent utility card. Mine's Land Tax. Yeah, Land Tax. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Just those white cards that were really pushed for fixing colors in ways that they shouldn't have been, like way back in the day. Like those are the cards I find myself like actually gravitating most towards. Yes, Pete, you get me. You get me. That's why you got to be on here. You get me. Tithe is an incredible fucking card. Oh man, I'm so happy I have one for this deck. And again, it's the reason to get Plateau is you've actually got an enormous amount of ways in just a Boros kind of build. If you're running any of the card advantage and ramp that's available in the white color at all, you'll find yourself grabbing Plateau way more often than you should. Like keep note of how many times you'd grab a functional one, and it's probably the most worth it dual land to run. But again, they're like $200 now, so I wouldn't do it unless you just like won the lottery. But Dualcaster Mage, just an excellent card. I don't think I have to say too much about it. A lot of our removal and a lot of our rafts are instants and sorceries. And since red ones have that natural like limitation that they may not kill giant creatures or creatures quite above their current spending, you can use Dualcaster Mage to kind of double the effect and possibly take out more creatures. Or it's just a solid card to hold up. Our general has flash, so our deck is more than capable of holding cards with flash or instant speed cards that are normally less than perfect when you kind of want to be proactive on your turn. But since our general has flash, we can play cards that are a little bit more, a little bit less like all around good or good in all spots, or just less proactive. Things like Dualcaster Mage. Perfect for this. And Lightning Greaves. It's just a good card. We have giant flying beaters. We really don't want them gone. And having them have haste is more than enough to catch people off guard, to pick off people. Shouldn't have to sing the praises of a card like Boots. Lightning Greaves is excellent. Run it. Next pile. Actually, we'll do this pile next because we were talking about Tide. This is our card advantage pile. Any deck that's playing control needs some way of generating an advantage in either cards or card quality over your opponents. And this is no exception. There's a lot of them, much more so than maybe the proactive side of it. You're just simply going to need to try and get a leg up. My favorite card printed in a long fucking time for red is Sunbird's Evocation. This card is completely fucking insane in every scenario I've had it, and I cannot sing its praises enough. Sunbird's Evocation is a 6-drop enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X card to your library, where X is that spell's converted mana cost, and then you may cast the card revealed this way with converted mana cost X or less, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Free spells. Basically almost a guaranteed hit on anything 4, 5, 6 and up. Pretty much 5 and up, you're going to hit something you can cast. And it's just fucking excellent. This deck in particular has a low land count and a high rock count. So you're even more likely to hit stuff off of Sunbird's Evocation. Maybe it's just a rock. Maybe you hit a marble diamond and it's not the biggest deal in the world, but you're still essentially drawing a card, casting it for free, and you can get around, you can bypass the limitation of the spells, like you can cast them with flash, essentially. If I cast Oblation or Chaos Warp, I look at the top 3 cards in my deck, and then I suddenly have a Repercussion. Would work great with my Narset, but I don't think there's room. You have to cast it from your hand. You got to remember that. There is a caveat. There is like a big limitation. It doesn't work with generals, and it doesn't work with free casting from other zones. So it works perfect in the kind of deck that isn't kind of doing broken stuff anyways. So if you're looking for an enormous advantage over your opponents in a way that's kind of more suited for fair decks, this is the perfect card. Basically, if you're playing fair, Sunbird's Evocation is a way to get a huge leg up on that and way outcast your opponents if they're slipping up on what they're doing. Fucking love it. It's bonkers with Frisch Cards Expert. Holy shit. Yeah, you're going to cast just so much fucking shit. I play it in a mid-range. I'll definitely show it. It's in my deck Gahiji, and it's in my Jund Punisher deck. Both decks that aren't quite playing the blue, like broken blue stuff, is basically the reason not to play Sunbird's Evocation. But in every other deck, you're gonna be more than happy with this card. It is a 6-drop do nothing enchantment, so you kind of just can't play it willy-nilly. But if you can get it out and have an open turn with it, everything from there on out is gravy, and I fucking love it. Also, this deck is perfectly capable of ramping into it a little bit faster than it should, so it won't necessarily be happening turn 6. Next is Mind's Eye, where a non-blue, non-green, non-black deck, we have to run Mind's Eye. That's just how it goes. Like, it's just an excellent card. You're going to draw a whole bunch of cards. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. Our general has Flash. We're more than capable of leaving all that mana open. Maybe you don't want to go under the threshold of casting her, but if you got 8 mana, you can now go to your heart's content, and you still have something to do at all times, not to mention whatever's in your hand. Just an excellent card in this deck. Nahiri the Harbinger, like I was saying before, she filters. She has a high loyalty, so she's not just dead to everything. And exiling the tapped creature, tapped artifact, or tapped enchantment is just as relevant as you'd guess for the most part. Obviously, there are going to be some creatures you can't hit, but if you're just looking to take out a Soul Ring turn 3, it's pretty fucking awesome. And even then, if you just pitch a card and draw a card, that's so fucking important in this deck. Card filter is pretty hard to come by, so you take it when you can, and it also functions as removal. Even if it just kind of gets cheesed and she dies after doing one thing, still not a bad way to spend 4 mana. Next is, oh yeah, this card's foreign, huh? Oof. Yeah, a couple of cards in here are foreign, and I know what most of them do. This is Outpost Siege. Now, I know it's one of its abilities. I don't know if it's dragons or cons, but one of the abilities is whenever a creature leaves the battlefield, a creature you control leaves the battlefield, you may ping, deal 1 damage to target creature or player. That's not what we're looking for here. The second half that you may pick when it enters the battle, or as it enters the battlefield, is at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play it as though it were in your hand. So it's essentially Chandra Pyromancer's second ability. But for the most part, it's just a free card every turn, and you can play lands off of it. So this is the red Phyrexian Arena. It's fucking incredible, especially when you have so much mana late game. It's just so nice getting the extra cards, and it's really important for this deck. This is another card I think is severely underrated and should see more play in basically the same decks that play Mind's Eye and Sunbird's Evocation. They just all kind of go together. It's just incredible card advantage for you. So we have a red Phyrexian Arena that you're pretty much always going to pick that mode. Next, we have Pirate's Pillage, another card they've printed very recently that's just fucking incredible for decks like these. Like they just keep piling it on. As soon as Archangel Avacyn was printed, since then it just seems like all they've been doing is giving me new goodies for a deck exactly like this for Boros control decks. There's not a lot of us, but boy do we sure appreciate the love lately. Pirate's Pillage is a 3-drop as an additional cost, discard a card, and you're going to draw 2 cards and then create 2 treasures. It's simple enough, but being able to just jettison yourself into the 7 mana range for the next turn is just so fucking important, because there are a lot of 7-drops in this deck. You don't go up to 8, but you do go to 7. And this card basically on turn 4 enabling the turn 7 play, because most likely you draw land of some sort off of it, and then you also have the 2 treasures. You'll be able to cast anything you want in this deck if you need to. And plus, even if you don't currently need the treasures, it's still Tormenting Voice, which is another copy of cards. We'd put pretty much any number of copies in here. Probably up to at least 8 versions of Tormenting Voice effects we'd run in this deck. Like, they're just so nice. So Pirate's Pill, just fucking excellent. Run it. This card is super expensive, but if you have it, it's awesome. Idyllic Tutor. It's really not a big deal, but it allows you to search your library for an enchantment and put it in your hand for 3 mana. Sorcery speed. It's a good card. It's just solid. We run a couple of different O-ring effects, things like Grasp a Light and shit like that. There's plenty of cards that are good for running, but for the most part, it grabs repercussions. So I put down the cash and got myself an Idyllic Tutor. Actually, I don't think I spent any money on this. I think I traded for it when it was cheap. But if I did spend the money, it would be worth it. Getting repercussion is really important. Here's another card that I just fucking love that I mentioned in my Queen Guacamole episode. And it's Shreds of Sanity. Another foreign card I have to just remember off the top of my head. But you bring back target instant and target sorcery card from your graveyard back to your hand, or up to 1 instant, up to 1 sorcery. And then you discard a card. Exile this card afterwards. Just excellent. You know, again, we run a lot of instants of sorceries, just like Dual Caster Mage being important. Being able to bring back some of those cards is excellent. Getting back a Path and an Earthquake is more than enough to really help you out. And you pitch like a rock or a land, and it's just excellent. Another Tormenting Voice effect with a little bit more card selection in what you're getting. I honestly can't believe they printed it. Sculpting Steel, not much to say. You're comping an artifact on the battlefield. I run it in here because there's just so many rocks to copy that it's worth running on its own. Another copy of Greaves is excellent, but for the most part, you're kind of running it to copy just your own rocks. But don't underestimate the fact that you can hit other people's stuff. Sometimes just a clutch Sculpting Steel can really help you out. Swords and all that fucking dumb shit. Paradox Engine, just broken shit that you want and your opponent. Having 2 Mind's Eyes is also fucking gross. But Sculpting Steel is worth a slot on those alone. Plus it's foil, and I didn't want to leave it sitting in a binder. Knight of the White Orchard. This is another one of those cards that just makes Plateau so worth it. First strike, 2/2 for 2. When it enters battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, which everyone will, like I said, low land count and lots of rocks, low land count, pretty much means all of these cards are going to trigger for the most part. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you search your library for a Plains card, put it on the battlefield, shuffle your library. Not even tapped. So just a fucking excellent card. One of the reasons to run, one of the reasons to base white off your deck is the fact that you can there's so many ways to fix your mana and grab your card and ramp a lot more than most decks should be able to. Wild Guess, Tormenting Voice. It's basically it's a 2-red Tormenting Voice. It was the first one and not the last, I imagine, that they'll print. Oscarosa Explorer, another version of the cards we were talking about. When it enters battlefield, search your library for up to X Plains cards, where X is the number of players who control more lands than you, basically everybody. And then you put them into your hand and shuffle your library. They don't go on the battlefield, but again, you're just drawing land cards. That's why we don't run a lot. It is because we can fetch them, and because we want to be able to keep that land count low. Gift of Estates, basically the same card as Oscarosa Explorer. Same idea. Sorcery that you can search for up to 3 if an opponent has more lands. So you can grab 3 Plains cards. Just excellent. Just good stuff. You're always going to make sure you have fodder for your Tormenting Voices, or fodder for, or lands to play, because, this deck can draw a little land light, but again, cards like these just make it so fleshed out. Make it so much nicer. Karthik Reunion, the Tormenting Voice variant, but it gets you 3 cards and you have to pitch 2. And then, you know, the man of the hour, Tormented Voice. All of these cards we run. We run a Shadows over Innistrad version because it's on flavor. I should really have a foil. And then we have Enlightened Tutor. Again, for the same reason, Idyllic Tutor is good. Enlightened Tutor is excellent. On top of that, it's able to search for artifacts. There aren't a lot to get, but getting a Mind's Eye or a Lightning Greaves is functionally way better than you'd think. Especially since Mind's Eye negates all of the card disadvantage of taking the card and putting it on top of your library. Tithe, me and Pete were just singing the praises of this card 5 seconds ago. It's fucking excellent. It's a non-restrictive Gift of Estates that searches for 2 planes if they have more, but you still get 1 planes if they don't have, if you have the most lands. So just fucking solid for 1 white mana. I can't believe it exists. It's incredible. Then we have Gamble. I fucking love this card. I will play it until the end of time in basically every red deck. You search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, then discard a card at random. Having tutor effects in a deck like this is really hard to come by. You play all the ones you can, and this one is above power level even for the other colors. It's just a really good card, and especially since we can fill up our hand with dumb shit from. I don't think I have a land tax for this deck. Fuck. Do I have a land tax? Oh, that's embarrassing. Aren't they coming out in Battle Bond? They are. I'm gonna get a land tax for this deck, you guys. This is really embarrassing. I can't believe it's not in here because what's next is Sensei's Divining Top. I'm sure I don't have to explain this card to you. Have you thought about running Endless Horizons? That's a card I really fucking love, but just sometimes getting lands just isn't quite enough. I don't know. Between Oscaros Explorer, Tithe, Gift of Estates, and land tax, if I pick one up, I probably wouldn't think about Endless Horizons at that point. If I didn't have a card like Tithe, or if maybe I couldn't afford one of the other ones. I mean, all of these cards are relatively affordable, so that's not really the problem. It's, yeah, I've thought about it, but I just don't think it works. I think it works better in mono white decks too. You do get to grab your Sacred Foundry, which should be a lot less expensive in the next upcoming, year or so. But the fact that you can kind of lock yourself out of red with it, I don't know. It's iffy. I'd say I've thought about it, but I don't think it quite fits. Academy Rector, I am not running Rector. Rector's a little too expensive for me at this point. And I just don't have anything else to grab with it. It just didn't seem worth the best enchantment to grab in this deck is a 3-drop. So I didn't find Rector particularly necessary, but I've thought about it. I think the card's an interesting alternative to maybe one of these cards if you don't have it, or if you don't like Oscaros Explorer. Maybe one of these cards hasn't been working out for you. Gift of Estates is a little risky. If you like a little less risk and more reward, play Endless Horizons over Gift of Estates, and you'll be fine. Or if you can't find a Tithe because they got bought out for whatever reason and now they're like $50, get yourself the Gift of Estates. It'll work fine. And then we got Sensei's Divine Top. Again, don't really have to explain that card to anybody. It's Squee. Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. Squee is I think since I've amassed a critical, there's now a critical mass of these effects that you can run. It's certainly worth thinking about. It's very restrictive to just that idea, especially since we kind of don't want to ever play Squee in any scenario otherwise. I could see maybe in a Goblin deck where you still kind of want to play him, or a mono red deck where you need him, but I'm not sure we're that hurting for card advantage, but it's certainly worth taking a look at. There were a couple cards that are weak maybe on this list. Squeeze better with Goblin something so worth it. He also blocks our days. Yes, but he also dies to all of our I guess you bring him back. I just don't like him for things like repercussion. I like to keep my creature count that's not like that's low to the ground and cheap creatures pretty pretty low count in this deck, just because you really don't want to die to your own repercussion effect. But it's still worth thinking about as just holding in your hand, especially since I believe he recently got reprinted. No, that was the other version. Even still, he shouldn't be too expensive. He should be like $4 tops. Go pick yourself up one and try it out if you're playing this deck. There are a lot of different ways you can go with generating card advantage in these colors. There's just a lot of really creative ways to do it. So it's a fun deck. It's a fun deck to play, mostly because it's not hard control. So what we have next is we have our removal. This is the most important. This is the biggest tend of playing control. You're just going to simply need to remove stuff that's there. And not just rafts, individual things that are just getting in your way. Because you don't really want, this is a weird control deck. You actually don't want a wrath when things are getting moderately out of control. You only really want a wrath when things are just so far out of your control you're about to lose. But otherwise, you want to brick these cards in your hand and blow everyone away all at once. So you're going to need individual spot removal to keep the pressure off of either everyone else or yourself. And a couple of these cards in here will make sure that you're not dying to shit before you can go off with your red rafts. First card on the list, Angel Serenity. This card's fucking excellent. It wins more games than on it. Like, it's won almost just as many games for me. Enters battlefield, you may exile up to 3 other creatures from the battlefield or creature cards in graveyards, and then when she goes away, they all come back. It's just simply a fucking excellent card. In a deck like this, where we really need to make sure that we're getting rid of the threats that we simply don't want there, she's able to eat up 3 of them without question. And not only that, but she's a 5/6 with flying. She's gonna beat face while you wait for it. Then we have Limvant Knight Primordial. I don't know how the fuck to say this card's name, but he's a Vigilance 4/7. And when he enters battlefield, he swords up to 1 target creature each opponent controls. Just a fucking excellent card. You can choose whether or not to swords it, which is great. And another card like Angel Serenity that can easily remove multiple creatures and cost 7 mana, which is why cards like Pirate's Pillage are important. Angel Sections. This is an O-ring on a 3/4 with flying as an angel. And she has Embalm, which means you can catch her from your graveyard later, which Embalm is the exact kind of mechanic that's meant to be forgotten in the late game. And while it's kind of douchey, people won't see it coming later. And that's definitely a step up in its favor. You may not even remember about it. But then all of a sudden when Ultra Pro art sleeves, no, these are Dragon Shield art sleeves. I guess I found these online. They were selling like Dragon Shields that had like pictures of dragons on the back. I thought it was cool, so I bought them. Dragon Shields are the only sleeves I'll actually play because I hate everything else. But I've been playing them for like 10 years and they've never failed me for the most part. Next is Cast Out. It's O-ring, but instant speed. Perfect with our general since she has flash. Grasp of Fate. This is a lot like the Primordial and the Angel of Serenity, where it O-rings up to 1 target permanent each opponent controls. Non-land permanent each opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. It's just an O-ring for multiple things. Fucking excellent. Also a good target for things like Idyllic Tutor and Enlightened Tutor in a pinch. You definitely want to grab those cards over like an O-ring and stuff like that. But next is Aura of Silence. A disenchant on an enchantment that you can sack later. Works great with Grave Titan. All of these cards from here on out that are O-rings at 3 mana are great with Sun Titan, but especially Aura of Silence because you can sack it whenever you want, and it'll also make your opponent's shit cost 2 more. Artifacts and enchantments cost 2 more while it sits there, so it's great to play early. O-Ring, like I've said, just fine. You need to be able to get rid of some stuff. Banishing Light, functional reprint of O-Ring. I don't know if there's any way to flicker enchantments instant speed or sack them instant speed. They're certainly not in this deck, so it's basically just O-Ring. Oblation, I mentioned this in the Queen Guacamole episode, where, what did he say? It was funny earlier. I'm trying to remember what the fuck that was. Oh, there we go. Marqueso. That was it. I keep saying guacamole because I'm hungry. I love avocados. Oblation just gets rid of some shit and you draw 2 cards. That's actually a little bit important sometimes because it's nice being able to get rid of some of our creatures in case we're about to go off. Sometimes we want to get rid of our own creatures and then we can draw 2 more cards. So Oblation works a lot more in our favor in this deck than maybe some of the other ones I like to play it in. For the most part, I just play it as an O-Ring that draws them 2 cards. Queen Guacamole now, there's no turning back. Cool. I'm stuck to that. That's my legacy. I'll die with it right down on my tombstone. Chaos Warp, duh, and/or hello. Yeah, we're in a deck. We need to be able to get rid of stuff. This is one of the only ways to blow up lands besides Star fucking Extinction. So that's important. Drugar Hedge Mage. I fucking love this guy. It's a 3-drop 2/2. When it enters battlefield, if you control 2 or more mountains, you blow up an artifact. If you control 2 or more planes, you blow up an enchantment. For the most part, you'll always be poised to blow up an enchantment. And sometimes you're able to blow up both. It's a wear and tear that's sorcery speed and is a 2/2. It's pretty incredible, and that's exactly what we're looking to do. Keep some of those artifact enchantments off the board that we can't just get rid of with red wraps. Same thing, wear and tear. An instant speed version of Drugar Head Mage with no restrictions. Just a fucking excellent card. Deck and Stone. This card is really important for this deck. I don't run a lot of white exile removal, but the 3 I do run are the best in the game, I think. And Deck and Stone is a card that has saved my ass more times than not. Exile target creature, it's a sorcery speed 2-drop. Exile target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. So you're just Maelstrom pulsing, but exiling all creatures with the same name. That player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. So they're never going to get more than 1 clue token, but if they have a whole bunch of like zombie tokens and shit like that, this just gets rid of so many fucking creatures. And it's kind of a panic button because we actually love the decks that flood the board with a whole bunch of tokens with the same fucking name. Like that's the kind of deck we kind of ruin for the most part. But in a pinch, this is just an exile effect for 2 mana. Even if it draws them a card, it's still a good card worth playing. Then we have Swords. I shouldn't have to explain this card. Same as Path. Another card, just shouldn't have to explain. They're instant speed. They get rid of a creature. 1 white mana. The drawback is almost never relevant. And so those are all the non-land cards in this deck. Council's Judgment. I don't own one. Plus, I don't like my opponents having any choice over it. That tends to lead to... I know they can't hit your stuff, but I still don't like the idea. In my personal meta, Pete, people hate me for the most part. In a loving way, but they hate me. Council's Judgment, exactly the kind of card I would play, and everyone would pick one of like Cody's plant tokens and just flick me off. Cards like that just simply don't work. I avoid a lot of cards that give my opponents any kind of real choice because people just like to fuck with me. So, unfortunately, Council's Judgment gets a cut for that. If you're playing in a meta where people know how to assess threats and can play politically in a way that doesn't drastically fuck you for the most part, then by all means, play a card like Council's Judgment. I unfortunately don't have the luxury. So last but not, that's not all the non-link cards. I lied to my entire audience. We have the Mana Rocks. These aren't particularly exciting, but there are a couple surprises in here that I think you'll like. Starting with Pyromancer's Goggles. It is a 5-drop, add 1 red to your mana pool. When that mana is spent on a red instant or sorcery card, you copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy. I will definitely, Peter. I don't know when they play there, but I'll definitely have to start keeping up with that. My weekends become incredibly less busy pretty soon. So that's something I'll definitely be interested in. I'm finally off to 70-hour shifts, and we're finally out of winter. And I'm also kind of moving into a phase in my life where I'm not living with, like, I won't need to be hanging out with some people every weekend anymore. So it'll be nice. I'll stop by on Friday sometimes. But we have Pyromancer's Goggles. This card is fucking awesome. Copies Chaos Warp, copies all of our Tormenting Voice effects, which is disgusting, by the way. Copying any one of them doesn't make you pitch the other 2 cards and just draws you double the cards from them. So even that combo alone is incredible and totally worth running this card for. But not only that, all of our wraths are red. And like I said, with Dualcaster's Mage, sometimes you just can't reach those creatures enough, or you can't reach some creatures, and Pyromancer's Goggles pretty much guarantees every one of your red wraths will kill all non-indestructible creatures. Next is Gilded Lotus. Pretty sure I don't have to explain this card. Solemn Simulacrum, another one that's just pretty obvious. We have Thran Dynamo. Again, all of these are perfectly fine to copy with your Sculpting Steel if you decide to run that. Hedron Archive, I love this card. In this deck in particular, it's very important that you can draw 2 extra cards off of it later. That comes in handy a lot. We have Chromatic Lantern, which is actually kind of important in this 2-color deck, because sometimes because some of the colors are triple mana symbols, and you really don't want to get stuck with that. So Chromatic Lantern is worth running. Then we have Worn Power Stone, which is another card that kind of ramps it. It's a Soul Ring that enters tapped for 3. Just a fine card. Another excellent mana rock. You have Commander Sphere, another great card. Has a cute combo with Sun Titan where you can draw a card every turn and gain a mana. Burnished Heart, Exploration, or Explosive Veggies. Colorless Explosive Veggies for 6. We run it. Plus can be gotten back with Sun Titan. Oh, look, another card, Mind Stone. That's excellent with Sun Titan. Mind Stone is just fine. It's fantastic. Marble Diamond. Just a tapped mana rock. Fire Diamond. Another tapped mana rock. I don't run like the Cold Steel Heart because I think it's ugly. And I hate the fact that it says Snow Mana on it. But you are more than welcome to run that card over either of these if you feel these are bad. I like the new art on them from the Commander 14. So I'll take the functionally worst card for it. And maybe I lose a game or 2 because of it. But hey, I deserve it. I'm terrible. Boros Signet. Another just mana rock. And then we have Soul Ring, which mine is altered to look like the old Soul Ring art with the new box. Pretty cool stuff. Other than that, last but not least, it's a couple basic lands. I'm not going to bother sleeving them because this is starting to get pretty long. I think I'm going to start cutting it out. Primal Amulet. Oh, what the fuck does that do? Primal Amulet. Let me look up Primal Amulet. Here, Magic Cards info. Primal Amulet. Primal Amulet, huh? That's an interesting card. I'll certainly say that's a newer card. I hadn't quite thought about it, but it's certainly not a bad idea, honestly. it's a little bit like Endless Horizons, where if maybe you don't like one of these cards I put in, the other ones will just more than suffice. There are plenty of like different versions of different cards. That's kind of what I love about this archetype is there's really, besides some of the card advantage cards and some of the removal, everything else is kind of so open-ended. There's plenty of different combinations of cards you can use. I think Primal Amulet is perfectly feasible. Being able to copy white instant sorcery cards is pretty nice. You find yourself maybe copying a Oblation or a couple of these exile cards. But for the most part, I think the 2 red ones are pretty feasible enough. Just a Dualcaster Mage, just because we do run a lot of enchantment-based removal. So maybe something very specifically just for instants and sorceries may not be worth the cut. Even on Pyromancer's Goggles, it could be a really, really fucking bad Fire Diamond, but that's still at least somewhat feasible on a board that maybe doesn't have anything. Maybe you don't have any instant or sorceries. It's at least doing something. But it's definitely a card worth thinking about. But besides some basic lands, I've got Nykthos. A lot of our cards are enchantments, and a lot of our angels have triple mana symbols. So we're actually able to create quite a bit of mana. And we do have some red X spells, so it's totally worth running this card. Otherwise, Command Tower, Sacred Foundry is actually incredibly important. I don't think you can run this deck without at least Sacred Foundry, which is a little unfortunate. They should really have more fetchable duels in enemy colors. But for now, Sacred Foundry is the only one that's not $200, so you're kind of forced to run it. I would say it's completely, just bent the shit out of this. Bent the shit out of this Terramorphic expense. I'd say it's the only one that's mandatory, and it really is. Clifftop Retreat, Rugged Prairie, Temple of Triumph. I'm not really surprising you with any of these. Needle Spires, I'd say, is pretty important. Exactly the kind of card people forget about. And it's a 2/1 with double strike, and it's red and white. We don't have a lot of ways of buffing it any higher, but the fact that we have Legions whatever in here, I forget what the name of that card is. Let's see. I have had Needle Spires out while Legion's Initiative is out, and so Needle Spires was a 3/2, and 6 damage is quite a bit when they weren't seeing it coming. So Needle Spires is cool. Definitely make sure you get that. The rest of it is all pretty. I run a Stone Quarry, a Boros Guildgate. We really need to make sure we're fixed well. And besides Nykthos, our other utility lands are Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. You can pay 4 and target creature gains double strike until end of turn. In a deck where we're more than capable of holding open our mana off turn just to cast our general with flash, we are more than capable of holding open 4 or 5 mana to give a creature double strike, which can punk out other players, give Avacyn double strike to get in for general damage. And with a damage doubler out, giving a creature double strike is pretty fucking devastating. Any 5 power creature suddenly turns into 20, and that's quite a fucking bit. So Sunhome is a really cool card to add, especially since we're able to fix our mana pretty well. Slayer Stronghold, target creature gets +2 Bestow, Vigilance, and Haste. Haste is important in this deck, and Vigilance gives us a blocker, giving Avacyn 2 more toughness. It's just a utility land that just adds so much damage that shouldn't have been there. And it's not target creature you control. So again, you have the political opportunity to really hurt another player a lot more than they originally thought they were going to. Arcane Lighthouse is really important in this kind of deck. It allows us to turn off Hexproof and Shroud for our opponent's creatures, which means we can get to the Urils, the Narsets, and stuff like that, because obviously decks like that we just kind of fold to decks that just do insane shit like that. And plus we don't even have to necessarily have the removal. Just having access to Arcane Lighthouse allows us to let our opponents deal with shit we don't like. Otherwise, we have cycling lands. We have a Myriad Landscape, which is just excellent for fixing us for the color we're not fixed for. And I should have an Evolving Wilds. I'm very much disappointed in myself for not having it, but here's Terramorphic Expanse. Reflecting Pool, I thought about it, but it's not really worth getting for me yet. Obviously, if you have more fixing, it's better than not. I like to have some basic lands. Having a high plains count is particularly important, just because you need to fetch so many of them. But I do like having a basic land count of probably at least 10. I really wouldn't go below that, especially if you plan on running things like land tax. You really don't want to kind of lock yourself out of anything to fetch. So there aren't a lot of spots for fixing in utility lands. They're kind of tight, but I certainly think Reflecting Pool is perfectly feasible. If you have one, definitely throw it in over probably like one of the Boros Guild Gates, one of just the tap lands. I'm sure it's just fine. But other than that, I should have an Evolving Wilds in here. God have mercy on my soul for forgetting it. It's probably because it's not foreign, because I'm a stickler for that kind of shit. Excuse me. But that is my Archangel Avacyn deck, completely explained in full. And it's a lot of fucking fun. I love this deck. I've loved it since I played it. When this video goes up, not live, I will have the tapped out link to it, which may not be the same list on here. Again, I'm incredibly lazy, and I'll try and get around to updating it in my spare time. I'm sure I'll have plenty of time to do it tomorrow. Today, I spent all day watching YouTube, so that was a good spend of my time. Were you the one that had Gerard? I was not the one with Gerard. That was Andy. And I believe since then he has made it Marin, because Gerard is a little bit oppressive. Not in any kind of real competitive sense, but he ran Gerard he stopped running Gerard just because the fling was just capable of ending games so much faster than it should have. And the pony dies. Oh, Gerard Eldrazi. If there were any Eldrazi decks on the show, that was me, and I was running Kozilek. I actually believe that deck's around here somewhere. I could totally do a deck tech on that too, even though it's a terrible fucking deck. But yeah, Gerard he's still running pretty much the same list. I believe there's a tapped out for it. Let me see if I can find a link to that real quick. I'll put that in the description. I couldn't personally do a deck tech on it without busting into his house and stealing it. But maybe if I start, expanding a little bit, I can grab, I can have other people on to talk about their deck list. Oh, it's still Gerard on here. Let me put that in the description. Copy. Not on the channel, but combining Gerard with Eldrazi. Oh, I'm still posting this, but I haven't thought about that. No, honestly, it sounds pretty cool. You'll definitely have big enough creatures to fling. I personally wouldn't run it just because I prefer my Eldrazi colorless, mostly because I have really expensive rocks that allow it to happen. And that's kind of the only reason I would run Eldrazi, is if I had all of the really expensive jewelry that allowed the deck to function. Colorless. Other than that, I'd just stick with the Lord of Extinction. Lord of Extinction kind of does the job all by itself. Mine either gets only ramp, Eldrazi, reanimate, or card draw. Okay. I mean, that sounds... You the one that had Gerard? Yeah. So to answer your original question, I was not. That was the one we used for the show. But I was not the one combining Gerard with Eldrazi. The only Eldrazi deck on the show was mine, and it was colorless, and the only Gerard deck was not. Only one of them each game. Wait, so you only get... your deck just screws you, or I don't get it. How do you only get one of those effects each game? Either way, I'm going to start wrapping up here. It's really fucking hot in this room. As much as I love my Gerard deck, is inconsistent all the time. Yeah, some decks just are. I couldn't tell you what it is, but some decks just don't fucking come together. I've made plenty of them that should completely work in theory, and I've taken them apart because they just, for whatever reason, never came together quite right. Maybe it's the local meta that doesn't give you quite enough time to put it together, or maybe just something's off, or you're not, I don't know. I've had some decks that were just total fucking flops. I've had some of them like this that just explode onto the scene and I'll never get rid of them. But as far as this deck goes and as the video goes, this deck tech is over. This is my Archangel Avacyn deck. Like I said, really fucking fun. The best way to run Boros Control that I've found, or at least the most fun. And it's more than capable of winning. I'll have a link to the description, or in the description, I will have a link to the tapped out for it. And there are several games I've played with it on the show where you can see its older versions, but for the most part, similar in action. So you can watch it happen. I've been informed that maybe I could start taking other people's decks and maybe doing deck techs on those. So if you're watching this and you're still sticking around, give me some deck ideas or send me your decks and maybe I'll show them off. That actually sounds like a pretty fucking cool idea. So until next time, this has been Sleeving Up Deck Techs with Adam from AA Gaming, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.